The blood pooling beneath her head had already begun to dry in the scorching Arizona sun when Cole Brennan spotted the overturned stagecoach in the canyon below, its wheels still spinning lazily in the desert wind. He pulled his horse to a stop on the ridge, squinting against the glare of the July afternoon. It was 1878, and this stretch of territory between Tombstone and Tucson had become notorious for road agents who preyed on travelers foolish enough or desperate enough to risk the journey. Cole had been tracking a herd of wild Mustangs for 3 days, hoping to catch enough to sell at the fort, but the sight of that wrecked coach changed everything. He urged his mare down the steep embankment, loose rocks skittering beneath her hooves. As he drew closer, the scene became clearer and more disturbing. The strong box had been pried open and left empty, its contents stolen. The driver lay motionless near the front wheel, clearly dead from the bullet wound in his chest. Another body, an older man in a fine suit, was sprawled several yards away. But it was the woman in the torn blue dress who caught his attention. She was lying on her side near a cluster of rocks, her auburn hair matted with blood, her face pale as winter snow. Cole dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the ground hard as he rushed to her side. He fully expected to find another corpse, another victim of the ruthless bandits who had clearly ambushed this coach. But when he knelt beside her and pressed his fingers to her throat, he felt it. A pulse, faint, thready, barely there, but unmistakably alive. Jesus, he muttered, immediately checking her injuries. She had a nasty gash on the side of her head where someone had struck her, probably with a gun barrel. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin felt clammy despite the heat. She needed help, and she needed it fast. Cole looked around at the desolate landscape. They were at least 15 miles from Tucson, maybe more. She would never survive the journey on horseback in her condition, not in this heat. He needed to stabilize her here first, get some water in her, and tend to that head wound before attempting to move her. He ran back to his horse and grabbed his canteen and the small medical kit he always carried. His mother had been adamant about that before she died, insisting that a man alone in the wilderness needed to know how to patch himself up. He had never imagined he would be using those supplies to save a stranger's life. Gently he lifted her head and tried to get some water past her lips. Most of it dribbled down her chin, but he saw her throat work slightly, swallowing a bit. That was good. That meant her body was still fighting. He tore a strip from his spare shirt and carefully cleaned the blood from her wound, wincing at the severity of the gash. She was going to need stitches, but that would have to wait until she regained consciousness. "Come on," he said softly, knowing she could not hear him, but needing to say something anyway. "You are tougher than they thought. You are going to make it." He fashioned a makeshift shelter using the overturned coach and his bedroll, creating shade to protect her from the relentless sun. Then he sat beside her, dampening a cloth with precious water and placing it on her forehead, watching for any sign of improvement. Hours passed. The sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Cole had spent that time dragging the bodies of the driver and the older man into the shade and covering them with whatever he could find. They deserved better than to be left for the vultures, but he could not give them a proper burial and care for the woman at the same time. She was his priority now. As twilight approached, she stirred. It was just a small movement, her fingers twitching against the ground, but it was enough to bring Cole instantly to her side. Her eyelids fluttered, and then slowly, painfully, they opened. Her eyes were green, he noticed, the color of sage after a rain. "Easy," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder as she tried to move. "You are hurt. You need to stay still." Her eyes struggled to focus on his face. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. He brought the canteen to her mouth again, and this time she managed several small sips before turning her head away. "The others," she finally whispered, her voice raw and cracked. "The driver, Mr. Harrison." "I am sorry," Cole said gently. "They are gone." Her eyes filled with tears, but she seemed too weak to cry. "They took everything? The payroll. Shot Mr. Harrison when he tried to fight them. Hit me when I screamed?" Her hand moved shakily toward her head. "I remember falling, and then nothing." "How many were there?" "4, maybe 5. I could not see clearly. They wore masks." She closed her eyes again, and for a moment Cole thought she had passed out. But then she spoke again. "They left me. Thought I was dead." "Well, you are not," Cole said firmly, "and I am not going to let you die out here. My name is Cole Brennan. What is yours? Catherine, she breathed. Catherine Hartley. All right, Catherine. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to rest tonight, and tomorrow, when you are stronger, we are going to get you to Tucson. There is a doctor there who can stitch up that head wound properly. But right now, you need to drink more water and try to eat something if you can. She nodded weakly, and Cole felt a surge of relief. She was coherent, she was talking, and she had the will to survive. Those were all good signs. He built a small fire as darkness fell, keeping it low to avoid attracting attention. The bandits were long gone, but there were other dangers in the desert at night. He had some dried beef and hardtack in his saddlebags, and he managed to get Catherine to eat a little, though she could barely keep it down. Why? She asked suddenly, her eyes on him across the fire. Why are you doing this? You could have just ridden on. Cole considered the question. I guess because leaving you here was not an option. Not for me, anyway. You do not even know me. Does not matter. You needed help, and I was here to give it. He poked at the fire with a stick. Besides, my mother would have come back from the grave to haunt me if I had left an injured woman in the desert. The faintest hint of a smile touched Catherine's lips. She sounds like she was a good woman. The best. Lost her 2 years ago to fever. He did not know why he was sharing this with a stranger, but something about the situation, the quiet night, the shared vulnerability, loosened his tongue. After that, I just started drifting, did not see much point in staying put. No family? Had a brother. He went off to the war and never came back. Father died when I was young, so it is just me and whatever I can carry on my horse. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. I was going to Tucson to be a school teacher, she said finally. There is a new school opening, and they hired me based on my letters. I left Missouri 3 weeks ago. Mr. Harrison was kind enough to let me travel with him. He was a banker, going to open a branch in Tucson. Her voice caught. He had a wife, children. I am sorry, Cole said, and meant it. Those men, they killed him for money, just shot him like he was nothing. Anger flickered in her eyes now, mixing with the grief. They deserve to hang. They will, if they are ever caught. But right now, we need to focus on keeping you alive and getting you to safety. She nodded, though he could see the fury still simmering beneath her pain. He liked that. It meant she had spirit, and spirit would help her survive. They spent the night under the stars, with Cole keeping watch and Catherine drifting in and out of an uneasy sleep. Every time she whimpered or moved restlessly, he was there, checking on her, making sure she was not getting worse. By morning, she seemed slightly stronger, though her face was still pale and drawn. We need to move, Cole said as the sun rose. Can you ride? I will have to, will I not? She accepted his help getting to her feet, swaying slightly before finding her balance. I am not going to lie. I feel terrible. I would be worried if you said otherwise, given that someone tried to crack your skull open. He brought his horse over and helped Catherine mount, then swung up behind her. Lean back against me. I will make sure you do not fall. It was not proper, riding this close to a woman he had just met, but propriety seemed like a distant concern when measured against survival. Catherine did as he instructed, and they set off at a careful pace toward Tucson. The journey was grueling. The sun beat down mercilessly, and even though Cole stopped frequently to give Catherine water and let her rest, he could feel her weakening against him. She was tough, though, tougher than many men he had known. She never complained, never asked him to turn back or give up. Tell me about these Mustangs you were tracking, she said at one point, clearly trying to distract herself from the pain. Nothing special, just a small herd, maybe 8 or 10 horses. Wild ones fetch good prices at the fort. Soldiers always need mounts. He adjusted his hold on her as the horse picked its way over rough ground. Been doing it for about 6 months now. It is hard work, but honest. Better than robbing stagecoaches. Considerably better, yes. Do you like it? The drifting, the freedom? Cole thought about that. Sometimes, other times it gets lonely. But I have not found a reason to settle down yet, so I keep moving. Maybe you will find a reason someday. Maybe. They rode in silence for a while, and then Catherine spoke again, her voice softer. Thank you, Cole. I know I said it before, but I mean it. You saved my life. You are not out of danger yet. Save your thanks for when we get you to the doctor. But despite his gruff words, something warm stirred in his chest. He had been alone for so long, focused only on survival and the next meal, the next town. Having someone to protect, someone who depended on him, awakened something he thought had died with his family. Tucson appeared on the horizon late in the afternoon, a collection of adobe buildings shimmering in the heat. Cole felt Catherine sag with relief against him, and he tightened his arm around her waist. Almost there, just hold on a little longer. They rode straight to the doctor's office, a small building near the center of town. Cole dismounted and carefully lifted Catherine down, supporting her weight as her legs threatened to give out. An older man with gray hair and spectacles looked up from his desk as they stumbled through the door. "Good God," the doctor said, rushing over. "What happened?" "Stage robbery," Cole said shortly. "She was left for dead, head wound, been unconscious on and off for nearly 2 days." The doctor, who introduced himself as Samuel Crawford, immediately took charge. He helped Catherine onto an examination table and began checking her injuries while firing questions at both of them. Cole answered what he could, standing back to give the doctor room to work, but unwilling to leave entirely. "You did well keeping her alive," Dr. Crawford said as he prepared to stitch Catherine's wound. "Another few hours in that sun, and she would not have made it. You are lucky, young lady, that this man found you." "I know," Catherine said, and her eyes found Cole's across the room. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that went beyond words. The doctor administered some laudanum for the pain and began his work. Cole stepped outside to give Catherine privacy, but he did not go far. He stood on the wooden sidewalk, watching the town go about its business, and wondered what happened next. A lawman approached him, a silver star pinned to his vest. "Heard there was a stage robbery. You the one who brought in the survivor?" Cole nodded and gave the sheriff, a weathered man named Tom Garrett, all the details he could remember. The sheriff listened grimly, taking notes. "Fourth robbery this month," Garrett said. "Getting so people are afraid to travel. You see anything that might help identify these men?" "I did not see them at all. Got there after they left. But Miss Hartley said there were 4 or 5 of them, wearing masks." "Same as the others. They are smart, these bandits. Hit fast and disappear into the hills. We have had posses out looking, but so far nothing." He shook his head. "I will need to talk to the lady once she is feeling better, get her statement. Give her a day or 2. She has been through hell. Fair enough? Where are you staying? Have not thought that far ahead yet. There is a boarding house down the street. Clean rooms, decent food. Tell Mrs. Murphy that Sheriff Garrett sent you. She will fix you up." He paused. "You planning on staying in town for a while?" "Until I know Miss Hartley is going to be all right, yes." Garrett studied him for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "You are a good man. Brennan, we could use more like you around here." After the sheriff left, Cole made arrangements at the boarding house and then returned to the doctor's office. Catherine was resting, her head properly bandaged now, looking slightly better thanks to the laudanum. "She needs bed rest and no excitement," Dr. Crawford said. "I want to keep her here for observation tonight. Make sure there is no swelling in the brain. But if she continues to improve, she can be moved to more comfortable lodgings tomorrow." "I will pay whatever it costs," Cole said. "Son, do you have that kind of money?" Cole thought of the small stash of coins he had saved from his Mustang sales. It was not much, but it would have to do. "I will manage." He spent the evening sitting in a chair beside Catherine's bed, dozing off and on. She slept more soundly than she had in the desert, the laudanum keeping the worst of the pain at bay. Whenever she stirred, Cole was instantly alert, ready to help if she needed anything. Sometime past midnight, she woke fully and found him there. "You should go get some rest. You look exhausted." "I am fine, Cole." Her voice was stronger now, more like what he imagined it normally sounded like. "You have done more than enough. Go sleep in a real bed. Doctor wants someone to watch you tonight. Make sure you are all right. Then let the doctor do it. It is his job. I am not leaving you." The words came out more intensely than he had intended, and Catherine's eyes widened slightly. Then her expression softened. "All right, but at least come here and sit on the bed instead of that horrible chair. You are going to cripple yourself." Cole hesitated, then moved to sit on the edge of the bed. Catherine shifted over to make room, and they sat there in the dim lamplight, an oddly comfortable silence stretching between them. "Can I ask you something?" Catherine said after a while. "Sure. Why did you really stay? The truth this time." Cole was quiet for a long moment, searching for the right words. When I found you out there, bleeding and barely breathing, something just clicked in my head. I could not walk away. It was not even a choice, really. It was like every step I had taken in my life had led me to that canyon at that exact moment, and if I had ridden away, I would have been betraying something fundamental about who I am. He looked at her. Does that make any sense? Yes, she whispered. It makes perfect sense. Her hand found his in the darkness, her fingers cool and small in his larger, calloused grip. Neither of them said anything more, but they did not let go either. The next morning, Dr. Crawford declared Catherine well enough to move to the boarding house, though he insisted she continue to rest and avoid any strenuous activity. Cole helped her walk the short distance down the street, and Mrs. Murphy, a kindly woman in her 50s, immediately took Catherine under her wing. Poor dear, she clucked, showing Catherine to a small but clean room. You just rest now, and I will bring you some good hot soup. That will fix you right up. Cole took a room down the hall, and over the next few days, he fell into a routine. He would check on Catherine several times a day, bringing her meals, sitting with her while she ate, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her parents who had died of cholera when she was 16, about her determination to make something of herself as a teacher. He told her about growing up in Texas, about learning to break horses from his father, about the emptiness that had followed him since losing his family. With each conversation, each shared story, Cole felt the walls he had built around himself beginning to crumble. Catherine had a way of looking at him that made him feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. And the way she smiled when he walked into her room, the way her whole face lit up, made something in his chest tighten with an emotion he was afraid to name. On the fourth day, Sheriff Garrett came to take Catherine's statement. She recounted everything she could remember about the robbery, though her description of the bandits was frustratingly vague. They had all worn bandanas over their faces, and the attack had happened so fast. One of them had a distinctive voice, she said, struggling to remember. Rough, like he had damaged his throat somehow. And another one had a scar on his hand, between his thumb and forefinger. I saw it when he grabbed the strongbox. That is more than we had before, Garrett said, making notes. I will pass this along to the territorial marshal. Maybe he will have better luck tracking these men down. After the sheriff left, Catherine seemed restless. I need to contact the school, she said. Let them know what happened, that I will be delayed. I can take a message to the telegraph office for you, Cole offered. She dictated a brief explanation, and Cole went to send it. When he returned, he found Catherine sitting by the window, staring out at the street with a melancholy expression. What is wrong? He asked. I was just thinking. About Mr. Harrison, about how quickly everything can change. One moment you are traveling to start a new life, the next moment you are fighting to survive. She looked at him. It makes you realize how precious time is, how we should not waste it. Cole sat down across from her. What are you saying? I am saying that I have been thinking about you, about us, about what has happened between us over these past few days. She took a deep breath. I know it is fast. I know we barely know each other. But Cole, when I look at you, when I am with you, I feel something I have never felt before, something that feels important. His heart was pounding. Catherine, you do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know. When I am well enough, I am supposed to take up my teaching position, start my new life. But the thought of you riding off, going back to chasing wild horses, never seeing you again. Her voice caught. I do not think I could bear it. Cole crossed the distance between them and knelt in front of her chair, taking both her hands in his. You think I could just ride away from you? After everything? Catherine, you have become the reason I have been looking for, the reason to stop drifting. I was just too scared to say it out loud. Her eyes shimmered with tears. Really? Really, I am not good with fancy words, but what I feel for you is real. It is the most real thing I have ever felt. Then stay in Tucson. We can figure out the rest together. I do not have a job here, no prospects. What would I do? You are good with horses. The Army Fort is always looking for skilled wranglers. Or you could start your own stable. There are options, Cole, if you want them. He studied her face, seeing the hope and fear and love shining there, and knew his answer. Yes, I will stay. The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative. full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. Over the next week, as Catherine continued to recover her strength, Cole made good on his promise. He went to Fort Huachuca and spoke with the quartermaster, who was indeed looking for someone skilled in handling horses. Cole's experience and obvious competence earned him a job breaking and training mounts for the cavalry. The pay was steady, better than what he had been scraping together as a mustanger. He also began making discreet inquiries around Tucson about starting his own stable someday. It was a long-term dream, but having Catherine in his life made planning for the future seem not just possible, but necessary. Catherine, for her part, met with the school board and was reassured that her position was still waiting for her. The school was set to open in 3 weeks, giving her plenty of time to fully recover and prepare. She threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction and the purpose. But the best parts of those weeks were the time she and Cole spent together. He would finish his work at the fort and ride into town, and they would walk along the dusty streets, talking and laughing, learning each other in the way that new lovers do. Sometimes they would sit in the small plaza and watch the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Other times they would have dinner at the boarding house, Mrs. Murphy beaming at them like a proud mother. "You two are good for each other," the landlady said one evening. "I can see it plain as day." Cole could see it too. Catherine brought light into his life. A sense of purpose and joy he had not known was missing, and he seemed to provide her with a feeling of safety and stability, an anchor in a world that had nearly destroyed her. One evening, about 3 weeks after the robbery, they were sitting on the porch of the boarding house when Sheriff Garrett approached, his expression grim. "Thought you should know," he said. "There was another stage robbery today, about 20 miles east of here. Same pattern as before. 3 people dead this time." Catherine's face went pale. "Did they catch anyone?" "Not yet, but the marshal has finally sent some deputies to help. They are forming a serious posse this time, planning to track these bandits down once and for all." He looked at Cole. "They are looking for men who can ride and shoot. Volunteers." Cole felt Catherine's hand tighten on his arm. "No," she said quickly. "Cole, you cannot. It is too dangerous." "She is right," Garrett said. "I am just passing along the information. You have done your part, Brennan. Nobody expects you to risk your life chasing outlaws." But Cole was thinking about Mr. Harrison, about the driver, about all the people who had died at the hands of these ruthless men. He was thinking about Catherine lying in the dirt, left to die because her life meant nothing to them. "When do they ride out?" he asked. "Cole, no." Catherine stood up, her eyes flashing. "You are not a lawman. This is not your fight. They almost killed you, Catherine. They did kill innocent people. How can I just stand by and do nothing? By choosing to stay alive. By choosing me." Her voice broke. "I just found you. I cannot lose you." The raw emotion in her words cut through his anger and sense of justice. He pulled her into his arms, feeling her tremble against him. "All right," he said quietly. "All right, I will stay." Garrett nodded approvingly. "Smart choice. I will tell the marshal you are sitting this one out." After the sheriff left, Cole and Catherine remained on the porch, holding each other as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. "I am sorry," Catherine whispered. "I know you want to help. I know you feel responsible somehow." "No, you are right. My place is here with you. The law will handle those men." He kissed the top of her head. "I am not going anywhere." The posse rode out the next morning, a group of grim-faced men led by a territorial marshal named John Bayan. Cole watched them go, fighting the urge to join them, but one look at Catherine's worried face was enough to keep him rooted in place. The town waited anxiously for news. Days passed with no word, and tension mounted. Catherine tried to focus on preparing for the school's opening, but Cole could see the worry eating at her. She jumped at sudden noises, had nightmares that left her gasping and crying. The trauma of the attack was not something that would heal as quickly as her physical wounds. Cole did his best to comfort her, to be there when the memories threatened to overwhelm her. He held her when she woke from nightmares, talked her through the panic attacks, reminded her that she was safe now. "I hate feeling this way," she said one night, after a particularly bad dream had left her shaking. "I hate being afraid all the time." "It is not going to last forever. You are healing, Catherine. Give yourself time." "What if they never catch those men? What if they are out there, still robbing and killing?" "Then we will deal with it together. But you cannot let fear control your life. That is letting them win. She nodded, taking strength from his steady presence. Slowly, day by day, she began to reclaim her sense of safety and normalcy. 2 weeks after the posse rode out, they returned. Cole and Catherine were among the crowd that gathered to watch them come in, and the news spread quickly. They had tracked the bandits to a hideout in the Dragoon Mountains and engaged them in a fierce gunfight. 3 of the outlaws had been killed, 2 captured. None of the posse had been seriously injured. Sheriff Garrett brought the 2 surviving bandits to the jail, and word went out that there would be a formal identification. The next day, Cole accompanied Catherine to the sheriff's office. She was nervous, her hand cold in his, but she was determined. "I need to do this," she said. "I need to see them, to know they cannot hurt anyone else." The 2 prisoners were brought out, their hands shackled. Catherine studied them carefully, and Cole saw recognition flicker in her eyes. "That one," she said, pointing to a hard-faced man with a ragged scar on his cheek. "He was there. I remember his voice and that scar on his hand." She pointed to his right hand, where a distinctive mark ran between his thumb and forefinger, just as she had described. "You sure?" Garrett asked. "I am certain." The man glared at her with pure hatred, but Catherine did not flinch. She had faced death and survived. She was not going to be intimidated now. "That is all I need," Garrett said. "Thank you, Miss Hartley. You have helped ensure these men face justice." Outside, Catherine let out a long breath. "It is over. It is really over." "Yes," Cole said, pulling her close. "It is over." The trial was held 2 weeks later, swift and decisive. Both men were found guilty of multiple counts of murder and robbery. They were sentenced to hang, and the sentence was carried out within days. Cole did not attend the execution, and neither did Catherine. They had both seen enough death. Instead, they focused on the future. The school opened on a bright September morning, and Catherine stood in front of her classroom of eager students, her heart full. She had survived, she had found love, and she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Cole, watching from the back of the room where he had slipped in unnoticed, felt a surge of pride and love so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. This remarkable woman, who had faced death and terror and came through it with her spirit intact, was his, and he was hers. After the students were dismissed, he approached her desk. "You were wonderful," he said. She smiled, that radiant smile that never failed to make his heart skip. "Thank you. It felt wonderful. Felt right." "I know what you mean." He took her hand. "Catherine, I need to ask you something." "What is it?" He had rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times, but now that it was here, the words tumbled out unpolished and raw. "I know we have not known each other long. I know this is fast, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I want to build a life with you, here in Tucson, or anywhere else you want to go. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to be the man you can count on, the man who will never leave you, never let you down." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a simple gold band he had bought with most of his savings. "Catherine Hartley, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling, laughing, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, of course. Yes." The ring slid onto her finger, a perfect fit, and when they kissed, it felt like a promise, a vow, a beginning. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the church, with Sheriff Garrett standing as Cole's best man and Mrs. Murphy as Catherine's matron of honor. Dr. Crawford was there, beaming with satisfaction at seeing his patient not just survived, but thriving. Half the town turned out, it seemed, all of them touched by the story of the school teacher who had been left for dead and the cowboy who refused to leave her side. Catherine wore a simple white dress, and Cole wore his best clothes, which were not much but were clean and pressed. They stood before the minister and spoke their vows with voices that shook with emotion, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Cole kissed his bride, there was not a dry eye in the church. They spent their wedding night in a small house Cole had rented on the edge of town, a modest place with 2 rooms and a small yard, but it was theirs. Catherine had never been with a man before, and Cole was gentle and patient, worshiping her body with a reverence that made her feel cherished and beautiful. When they finally came together, it was not just a physical joining, but a spiritual one, 2 souls finding their completion in each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Catherine's head on Cole's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too, more than I have words to say. You found me when I had given up hope. You brought me back to life. You gave me a reason to live, Catherine. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Now every day means something because I get to spend it with you." She tilted her head up to kiss him, slow and deep, and they made love again, this time with less nervousness and more confidence, learning what pleased each other, building the intimacy that would sustain them through all the years to come. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Catherine taught at the school, and her students adored her. She was patient and kind, but firm when needed, and the children flourished under her guidance. Parents praised her, and the school board congratulated themselves on finding such an excellent teacher. Cole continued working at the fort, earning a reputation as one of the best horse trainers in the territory. He had a natural gift for understanding the animals, for gentling even the most spirited stallions without breaking their spirit. Officers sought him out specifically, trusting him to train their personal mounts. He also began saving money in earnest, putting aside every spare penny toward his dream of opening his own stable. Catherine supported him completely, helping him plan and strategize, offering encouragement when progress seemed slow. On Sundays, they would often ride out into the desert together, Cole having taught Catherine to ride properly. She had been nervous at first, the memory of the stagecoach attack making her skittish around horses. But with Cole's patient instruction and encouragement, she overcame her fear. Soon she was riding with confidence, laughing as they raced across the open ground, her hair streaming behind her like a banner. Those rides became sacred to them, time away from the demands of work and town life, time when it was just the two of them and the vast beauty of the Arizona landscape. They would find a spot with shade and spread out a blanket, eating the lunch Catherine had packed while talking about their dreams and plans. "I want children someday," Catherine said one afternoon as they lay side by side, watching clouds drift across the brilliant blue sky. "Not yet, but someday. I want a house full of laughter and love." "How many children?" Cole asked, smiling. "3, maybe 4, enough to keep life interesting." She rolled onto her side to look at him. "What about you? Do you want children?" "I never thought much about it before, but yes, with you, I want everything. Children, a home, a life that matters." "We will have it, Cole. All of it. I know we will." And slowly, steadily, they built that life. Cole's reputation grew, and with it, his income. Catherine was promoted to head teacher after 2 years, with a raise that allowed them to save even more. They moved into a larger house, one with 3 bedrooms and a real parlor, and Catherine decorated it with care, making it a true home. In the spring of 1881, Cole finally had enough money saved to open his own stable. It was a modest operation at first, just a small barn and corral on the outskirts of Tucson, but it was his. He hired 2 hands to help him, and within months, business was booming. Ranchers from all over the territory brought him their horses to train, and the Army continued to send him mounts as well. Catherine threw herself into supporting his business, keeping the books and handling correspondence when Cole was too busy with the actual training. They were a true partnership in every sense of the word, each one's strengths complementing the others. It was that same spring when Catherine realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, the slight nausea in the mornings, the tenderness in her breasts, but she waited to be sure before telling Cole. When Dr. Crawford confirmed it, she walked home in a daze, equal parts excited and terrified. Cole was in the barn when she arrived, working with a young colt. She stood at the fence and watched him for a moment, marveling at the gentle strength in his movements, the patience and skill he brought to his work. This man, this good, kind, strong man, was going to be the father of her child. "Cole," she called, and he looked up, smiling when he saw her. "Hey, I did not expect you home so early. Everything all right?" "Everything is perfect. Can you come here for a minute?" He handed the colt off to one of his assistants and walked over, vaulting the fence with easy grace. "What is it? You look like you're about to burst." "I am pregnant." The words hung in the air between them for a heartbeat, 2 heartbeats. Then Cole let out a whoop of joy and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while she laughed and clung to his shoulders. "Are you sure? When did you find out? How are you feeling?" The questions tumbled out of him, and Catherine laughed harder. "Yes, I am sure. Dr. Crawford just confirmed it, and I feel wonderful. a little queasy sometimes, but wonderful. He set her down gently, as if she were made of spun glass, and cupped her face in his hands. "We are going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby," she confirmed, and they both started laughing, giddy with joy and possibility. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Catherine continued teaching through the fall, though she had to give up riding, which she mourned. Cole was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying about her health and comfort. She found it endearing, even when it drove her a little crazy. "I am not made of porcelain," she said one evening, when he insisted on carrying her up the stairs. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. Not my woman, not my baby, so I'm going to fuss, and you are just going to have to tolerate it." She kissed him, touched by his fierce protectiveness. "I suppose I can manage that." Their son was born on a cold January morning in 1882, after a labor that lasted 12 hours. Cole paced the hallway outside their bedroom, driving Dr. Crawford's assistant crazy with his constant questions and hovering. When he finally heard the baby's first cry, he nearly broke down the door getting inside. Catherine was exhausted, her hair damp with sweat, but her eyes were shining as the doctor placed the squalling infant in her arms. "It is a boy," Crawford announced. "Strong and healthy, congratulations." Cole approached the bed, slowly, reverently, staring at the tiny red-faced creature in his wife's arms. "He is perfect," he breathed. "Do you want to hold him?" With infinite care, Cole took his son into his arms. The baby quieted immediately, his unfocused eyes trying to find his father's face. Cole felt something crack open in his chest, a love so vast and overwhelming it nearly brought him to his knees. "Hello, little man," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise you, I am going to be the best father I know how to be. I am going to keep you safe and teach you right from wrong and love you every single day of your life." Catherine watched them, tears streaming down her face, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her family. This was the life she had dreamed of and fought for, and somehow miraculously received. They named him James, after Cole's father, with the middle name Thomas, after Catherine's father. Little James Brennan was welcomed into the world with love and joy, and he thrived under the doting attention of his parents. Cole proved to be a devoted father, helping with nighttime feedings and diaper changes without complaint. He would walk the floor for hours with James when the baby was fussy, singing old cowboy ballads in his rough voice until the child fell asleep. Catherine would watch them from the bedroom doorway, her heart swelling with love for both of them. As James grew from infant to toddler, their home filled with laughter and chaos and love. The stable business continued to prosper, and Cole hired more hands, allowing him to spend more time with his family. Catherine had resigned from teaching after James was born, wanting to focus on raising their son, but she still helped with the stable's books and correspondence. When James was 2 years old, Catherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was met with calm joy rather than giddy excitement, the confidence of parents who had been through it before. Their daughter, Emily Rose, was born in the autumn of 1884, a tiny, delicate thing with Catherine's auburn hair and Cole's gray eyes. James was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help care for her, to hold her, and show her his toys. Cole and Catherine supervised these interactions carefully, but it was clear that the siblings would be close. Life continued its forward momentum. The children grew, the business expanded, and the years unfolded with a richness that never failed to amaze Catherine. Sometimes, usually late at night, when the house was quiet and she was lying in Cole's arms, she would think back to that day in the desert, how close she had come to dying, how easily her story could have ended there in the dust and heat and blood. But it had not ended, because Cole had refused to leave her. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked one such night, sensing her wakefulness. "About how lucky I am. About how different everything could have been." "Catherine?" His voice was gentle but firm. "You survived because you are strong. You built this life because you are brave and determined. I was just fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. You are more than that. You are my hero, my love, the best man I have ever known." He kissed her temple. "And you are everything to me, everything that matters. You and the children, this life we have built. I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts, not even those. They made us who we are. They brought us here." She snuggled closer to him, content and loved and safe. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the cottonwoods, and somewhere in the distance a coyote sang to the moon. But inside their home, all was peace. The years passed in a blur of milestones and memories. James grew tall and strong, with his father's love of horses and his mother's quick mind. Emily was bright and spirited, with a stubborn streak a mile wide and a heart big enough to encompass the world. Catherine and Cole watched their children grow with pride and wonder, marveling at the little individuals they were becoming. When James turned 8, Cole began teaching him to work with the horses, starting with the gentle ones and gradually working up to more challenging animals. The boy had a natural talent, just as his father did, and he took to the work with enthusiasm. Emily, not to be left out, demanded to be taught as well, and though she was only 6, Cole patiently showed her the basics. "You have your hands full with that one," Catherine observed one afternoon, watching Emily fearlessly approach a horse 3 times her size. "She reminds me of someone else I know," Cole said with a grin, "a certain schoolteacher who refused to let fear control her life." Catherine laughed. "I suppose she does get that from me." In 1888, when Catherine was pregnant with their 3rd child, there was a scare. She started bleeding in her 5th month, and Dr. Crawford ordered complete bed rest. Cole was beside himself with worry, hovering constantly, and it took both Catherine and the doctor to convince him that she would be fine if she just rested. James and Emily were confused and frightened by their mother's confinement, and Cole did his best to explain without alarming them further. They adapted, bringing their mother drawings and stories, sitting on the edge of her bed to tell her about their days. Catherine was touched by their concern and love, even as she chafed at the forced inactivity. But the rest worked. The bleeding stopped, and the pregnancy continued. Their 2nd son, Samuel, was born healthy and squalling in February 1889, another perfect addition to their family. With 3 children, the house was louder and busier than ever. Cole expanded the barn and hired more help so he could spend more time at home. The stable had become one of the most successful in the territory, and they were financially comfortable in a way that would have seemed impossible in those early, struggling years. Catherine sometimes thought about going back to teaching, but the school board had filled her position years ago, and with 3 young children, the timing was not right anyway. She contented herself with teaching her own children, reading to them every evening, helping with their lessons, instilling in them a love of learning and curiosity about the world. On a warm spring evening in 1890, when Samuel was just over a year old, the family gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. James was practicing his reading, Emily was playing with her doll, and Samuel was toddling around, exploring everything within reach. Cole sat in his rocking chair with Catherine beside him, their hands intertwined. "Can you believe it has been 12 years since we got married?" Catherine asked. "Feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago at the same time. Do you ever regret it? Giving up the drifting life? Settling down?" Cole looked at his family, his eyes traveling from one beloved face to another. "Not for a single second. This is what I was always meant to do. Be your husband, their father. Everything else was just waiting until I found you. I love you, Cole Brennan, more now than even on our wedding day, if that is possible. It is possible, because I feel the same way. You get better, more beautiful, more amazing with every year that passes." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. James finally gave up on his book and joined Emily in her game, and Samuel crawled over to his father, pulling himself up on Cole's leg. Cole lifted the boy onto his lap, and Samuel immediately grabbed at his father's nose, giggling. This was happiness, Catherine thought. Not some grand dramatic thing, but these quiet moments of togetherness, of love that had been tested and proven, of family and home and belonging. That summer, Sheriff Garrett stopped by the stable. He was older now, grayer, planning to retire soon. "Just wanted to tell you," he said to Cole, "that they finally caught the last of that gang. You remember, the ones who attacked Miss Catherine's stage?" Cole nodded. "I remember. Well, the ringleader had been hiding out in Mexico, but the federales caught him and extradited him back. He was tried and hanged last week." Garrett shook his head. 12 years it took, but justice finally caught up with him. "Good," Cole said simply. "Thank you for letting me know." That evening, he told Catherine. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the news. "I thought I would feel something," she said finally. "Relief or satisfaction or something. but mostly I just feel sad. Sad for all the lives that were destroyed, all the years that man spent running. What a waste. You are more forgiving than I am. I am glad he is dead. Glad he can never hurt anyone else. I understand that, but I do not want to carry anger or hatred anymore, Cole. Those men took enough from me. I am not going to give them any more of my life or my peace. She took his hand. I choose to focus on what I have, not what was almost taken away. He pulled her into his arms. You are an amazing woman, Catherine Brennan. I learned from an amazing man. As the 1890s unfolded, the Brennan family continued to grow and thrive. James, now a teenager, was increasingly involved in running the stable, showing a business acumen that impressed both his parents. Emily had developed a passion for books and learning, and Catherine secretly hoped she might become a teacher someday. Samuel was the wild child, constantly getting into mischief, but with such charm and joy that it was impossible to stay angry with him for long. In 1895, when Catherine was 41, she was surprised to discover she was pregnant again. She and Cole had assumed their family was complete, but nature had other plans. Their youngest daughter, Grace, was born in the spring of 1896, a serene, contented baby who seemed to bring an extra measure of peace to the household. The older children doted on their baby sister, and James, now 16 and nearly a man, was surprisingly gentle with the infant. She has you wrapped around her little finger, Catherine teased him. She is just so small, he said, carefully supporting Grace's head as he held her. Someone has to make sure nothing happens to her. You are a good brother, James, a good man. Your father and I are very proud of you. He flushed with pleasure at the praise, and Catherine felt a surge of maternal pride. They had done well with their children, she and Cole, raised them with love and discipline, taught them values and skills, prepared them to make their own way in the world. As the new century approached, Tucson was changing. No longer a wild frontier town, it was becoming a proper city with paved streets and electric lights. The railroad had arrived, bringing with it commerce and growth. The stable business adapted, focusing more on boarding and breeding than breaking wild mustangs, but it continued to prosper. Cole was in his early 50s now, his hair more silver than brown, his face weathered by decades under the desert sun. But he was still strong, still vital, still the man Catherine had fallen in love with all those years ago. She was in her mid-40s, with laugh lines around her eyes and silver threading through her auburn hair, but Cole still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. James married in 1899 to a lovely young woman named Sarah, and Catherine and Cole became grandparents 9 months later when their grandson, named Cole after his grandfather, was born. Holding that tiny baby, Cole felt the circle of life complete itself, from drifter to husband to father to grandfather, each role more fulfilling than the last. Emily, now 15, announced her intention to become a teacher, just as Catherine had hoped. They began making plans for her to attend a teacher's college in California, though Cole grumbled about his daughter going so far away. She needs to spread her wings, Catherine told him. We cannot hold her back just because we will miss her. I know, does not mean I have to like it. No, it does not. But we will survive, just like we have survived everything else. In the spring of 1900, as a new century dawned full of possibility and promise, the Brennan family gathered for a photograph. It was Catherine's idea, wanting to commemorate this moment in time. The photographer set up his equipment in front of their house, and the family arranged themselves carefully. Cole and Catherine sat in the center, with Grace, now 4 years old, on Catherine's lap. James stood behind them, with his wife Sarah and baby Cole. Emily stood beside her father, her hand on his shoulder. Samuel, now 11 and unable to stay completely still, managed to hold his pose long enough for the exposure. Everyone ready? The photographer called. Hold very still now. Catherine looked around at her family, at the faces she loved more than life itself, and felt tears prick her eyes. Who would have thought, all those years ago when she was lying bleeding in the desert, that this would be her future? That she would not just survive, but thrive, building a life richer and fuller than anything she had ever imagined. What are you thinking? Cole whispered, seeing her expression. That I am the luckiest woman alive, that I have everything I ever wanted and more. We both are. Lucky, I mean. He squeezed her hand. You are still the best thing that ever happened to me, Catherine. And you are still my hero, my love, my everything. The photographer's flash powder exploded with a bang and a puff of smoke, capturing that moment forever. The image would show a family bound by love and history, by trials overcome and joys shared. It would show a man who had chosen compassion over convenience, a woman who had chosen courage over fear, and the beautiful life they had built together. As the years continued to unfold, as their children grew and married and had children of their own, as Cole and Catherine grew older together, that moment remained. A testament to the power of love and second chances, to the strength found in refusing to give up or give in. Cole and Catherine Brennan lived long, full lives. They saw automobiles replace horses, saw electricity and telephones become commonplace, saw the world change in ways both wonderful and terrible. But through it all, they had each other. From the day in the desert when death had seemed certain, but life had somehow prevailed, through all the years that followed, they had each other. Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1922, at the age of 74, with Catherine holding his hand. She followed him 2 years later, at the age of 70, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who had all benefited from the love story that began with a cowboy who refused to leave a dying woman in the desert. Their grandson, young Cole, who had listened to the story of how his grandparents met countless times, made sure it was recorded and passed down through the generations. It became a family legend, a reminder that the smallest acts of compassion can change not just one life, but many, rippling out through time in ways we can never fully predict or understand. In the old cemetery in Tucson, their graves lie side by side, two simple headstones under the endless Arizona sky. The inscriptions are brief, just names and dates, but to those who knew them, who loved them, who were blessed to be part of their story, those stones represent so much more. They represent a love that refused to die, a second chance seized and cherished, a life built on the foundation of one man's choice to stay when he could have ridden away, and one woman's determination to survive and thrive despite all odds. Years after their deaths, Emily, who became a beloved teacher just like her mother, would tell her students the story. She would speak of her father finding her mother left for dead, of his refusal to abandon her, of the love that grew from that moment of crisis and compassion. The measure of a person, she would say, is not what they do when it is easy or convenient, but what they do when it costs them something. My father could have ridden on. Nobody would have blamed him, but he stayed, and in staying, he saved not just my mother's life, but his own. Because they saved each other, really. She gave him purpose, he gave her hope, and together they built something beautiful. The students would listen, rapt, to this real-life love story that seemed like something from a novel. And some of them, years later, would find themselves at crossroads, facing choices between the easy path and the right path. And they would remember the story of Cole and Catherine Brennan, and they would choose to stay, to help, to love, even when it was hard. That is the true legacy of their love, not just in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood in their names, but in the countless lives touched by their example. The ripple effects of one good choice, made in a desert canyon in 1878, spreading out across decades and generations. The house they built still stands, converted now into a museum dedicated to preserving the history of early Tucson. Visitors can walk through the rooms where Catherine and Cole raised their family, see the photographs on the walls, read the letters they wrote to each other during the brief times they were apart. The stable is gone, replaced by modern development. But a historical marker stands where it once was, commemorating Cole Brennan's contribution to the territory's equine industry. And in the archives of the local library, there is a collection of Catherine's letters and diaries, documenting her journey from a young woman traveling west to start a new life, through the trauma of the stage robbery to her marriage and the decades that followed. Researchers and historians study those documents, mining them for insights into frontier life and women's experiences in the Old West. But beyond the historical significance, beyond the facts and dates and details, there is the heart of the story. Two souls who found each other at the worst possible moment and chose to hold on, who built a love that lasted through all the trials and tribulations that life threw at them, who showed that heroism is not just about grand gestures, but about the decision to stay, to care, to commit, even when it is difficult. Their story is a reminder that we all have the capacity for that kind of love, that kind of courage, That every day we make choices that shape not just our own lives, but the lives of those around us. That compassion and kindness are not weaknesses, but the strongest forces in the universe. In the end, Catherine and Cole's story is not just about a cowboy who saved a woman left for dead. It is about two people who saved each other, who chose love over fear, hope over despair, life over death. It is about the power of human connection and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And it is about the simple but profound truth that sometimes, when we refuse to leave someone behind, we find exactly what we have been searching for all along. Their love story began in violence and blood, in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the Arizona desert. But it bloomed into something beautiful and enduring, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the transformative power of love. Cole Brennan found Catherine Hartley breathing when everyone else had left her for dead. He refused to leave, and in that refusal, in that simple act of human decency and compassion, he set in motion a love story that would span decades, touch countless lives, and remind future generations that the choice to stay, to care, to love, is always the right one. They lived, they loved, they built a family and a legacy that endured long after they were gone, and they did it all because one man made the choice to stay, and one woman found the strength to survive. That is the story of Cole and Catherine Brennan. A story of the Wild West, yes, but more importantly, a story of the human heart. A story that reminds us that no matter how dark the moment, how desperate the circumstances, love can find a way. Hope can prevail. And two people who refuse to give up on each other can build something that lasts forever. In the quiet of the cemetery where they rest, the wind still whispers through the desert grass, carrying with it the echoes of their love story. Travelers passing through Tucson might not know their names or their history, but their legacy lives on in the family they created, the lives they touched, and the example they set. Because in the end, we are all just looking for that one person who will refuse to leave us behind, who will stay when staying is hard, who will love us through the worst moments and celebrate with us through the best. Cole and Catherine found that in each other, and their story stands as a beacon of hope for everyone still searching. They left her for dead after robbing the stage. The cowboy found her breathing and refused to leave. And from that moment of crisis and compassion, a love story for the ages was born. A story that reminds us all that sometimes the greatest adventures begin not with a dramatic quest, but with the simple decision to stay, to care, to love, and to never, ever give up on each other.